This session is Why Digital Accessibility with me, Paul Treadwell. And if that's not the session you're hoping to be in, then you're welcome to hang out. Otherwise, it's probably not the place you want to be. For those of you who have heard an introductory accessibility presentation before, I apologize, some of this is going to be familiar. But for those of you who are new to the topic, or this is the first time you've participated in one of our accessibility webinars, we're going to cover some of the foundations. And I just wanted to let you know that we do have a CCE accessibility team here at Cornell Cooperative Extension. And the members are Katie Bailden, who's on the webinar today, Katina Hyman, who is our new user experience specialist here, Emily McFarland from down at the hall at Human Resources here, Heather Russell, and you've got me. The email address we have for accessibility questions or queries or information is cce-accessibility@cornell.edu. I would also like to extend the invitation to anybody who has a deep and abiding interest in accessibility. If you would like to join our team, we are certainly more than welcome to have you. The team has been, for about 6 months now, planning and working towards creating accessible digital resources for Cornell Cooperative Extension. We've laid a foundation, and now we're moving forward. And so we're going to cover some of the foundational things here during this session. So we'll talk about the why of accessibility and how an inclusive design mindset can help integrate accessibility into our workflows. So really, we're talking a little bit about changing our culture and the way we work. And we'll also look at resources that are available to help you on your journey. So we're gathering resources. We have a site that you can go to, accessibility.cce.cornell.edu. And that will sort of be your one-stop shop towards accessibility resources that we're identifying, developing, or sharing with the system. I thought it'd be nice to start out by defining what we mean by accessible. And accessible means a person with a disability is afforded the opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as a person without a disability in an equally effective and equally integrated manner with substantially equivalent ease of use. The person with a disability must be able to obtain the information as fully, equally, and independently as the person without a disability. So that sort of lays out our charge. That's what we're looking to do when we talk about our digital assets, all the content that we present online, is to provide equitable access, inclusive access to that content. Digital accessibility refers specifically to the inclusive practice of making digital content usable by people of all abilities and disabilities. So when you broaden your thinking to look at the accessibility issue as being this very inclusive sort of process, it's not just focused on disability, but it's focused on differing abilities and creating an environment that allows everybody in, then it becomes a much more positive thing, I think. When digital content is correctly designed, developed, and edited, all users can have equal access to information and functionality. And that matters a lot for us. When we talk about digital content, we want to define sort of what our parameters around that. It's often called, digital accessibility is often called web accessibility, which can be a little bit misleading. If you just think web pages and things like that, that's only one slice of what we're looking at. We also have to take into consideration newsletters that are posted online or distributed via email, any documents that are accessible via the web. So you post a PDF, you post a Word document, those need to be accessible. Any media that's going to be hosted on a website or any web location, and that includes video, which also includes our recorded webinars that are going to be posted online, audio such as podcasts or narrations of specific processes, and images. And this does include social media. So there's a vast amount of content that we're creating that is digital that we need to start ensuring is accessible. So who's affected? Differing abilities affect how people interact with digital content. There are visual, motor, auditory, and cognitive processes that all come into play when we look at accessibility. I just want to pause here for a quick minute and see how we're doing. Is the pace okay? Am I going too slow, too fast? Okay, good. Just wanted to touch base. And again, if you have questions during this presentation, please feel free to type them in the chat. We have both Kate and Heather monitoring the chat. So please feel free, if questions arise, to just sort of dump them into the chat, and we'll pick them up and answer them as we go.
And Paul, you do have a request there. You're just a little fast, so if you could.
All right. Well, the caffeine must be kicking in, so I'll just take a breath and slow down a wee bit. There was a slide that I took out of this set because it was becoming very long, that talked about the difference between permanent and temporary disabilities. And I'm really kind of sad now that I'm thinking about it that I dropped that, but I'll post that image to the course page that is the home for this webinar link and the resources we have, because it's really interesting to think not all disabilities are permanent, and everybody at some point in their life can be affected with a injury or a life situation that changes their ability. So we're really trying to develop this process of including access and thinking about it that way. But if we go back to the hardcore accessibility issue, why does it matter? It's estimated that 11.6% of New York State citizens have a disability, a permanent disability. 2.1% of those are visual, 6.6% are ambulatory, 2.8% are auditory, 4.5% are cognitive. And there's been a 37% increase in digital accessibility lawsuits in the US in 2016. Also, 71% of users with a disability will simply leave a website that's not accessible. So 11.6% of our citizens are impacted by our accessibility. And it's also got some legal ramifications if we are not accessible. There is a legal foundation, and I'm not going to go into depth on the legal foundation. We did that on a previous webinar, which is posted on the accessibility site. So if you really want to look at the legal requirements, you can go and review that one. But federally, there's the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, and sections 504 and 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Those sort of define the legal baselines we have to meet. Then New York State also has a human rights law that is got some things to say about accessibility. So those are sort of where we take the guidance from. As to who has a role in digital accessibility, it's not just a tech person sort of thing. It's not just your IT support folks. It's content creators and document authors, and I would imagine most everyone here in some way is a content creator or document author, so this impacts you. Supervisors are responsible for ensuring managing staff, giving them the training opportunities that they need in order to create accessible web content. Web managers, obviously. And then purchasing and procurement, if you're going to be buying online systems, if you're going to be buying digital services, you have a responsibility in purchasing to make sure that they are compliant as well. So really it touches pretty much everybody in our system, I think. When we really start talking about accessibility and we have the legal sort of foundations, the legal requirements, but then you have to have guidelines that will help you implement those requirements into actual practices. And that's where we talk about the World Wide Web Consortium and WCAG or WCAG. They create the guidelines for implementing accessibility. So ADA 504 and 508 lay out the legal obligations. WCAG establishes the guidelines and success criteria. So that's how we can measure our progress forward. The shorthand for the principles underlying WCAG 2.0, which was the current version, but now we're at 2.1, same principles, is POUR, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So WCAG are the results of the web accessibility. So the web content accessibility guidelines are the result of the Web Accessibility Initiative of the World Wide Web Consortium. So we're going to talk a couple minutes about POUR and what that actually means. And these definitions include themselves, which I always find interesting. Perceivable is information and user interface components must be presentable to users in ways they can perceive. So again, the most obvious one there is visual impairment. When you think about perception, how do you present content that is accessible to someone who is visually impaired? Operable, user interface components and navigation must be operable. Again, if you are blind or visually disabled, or if you have motor restrictions, how do we make interfaces that are operable, navigable, and usable by folks like that? Information on the operation of the user interface must be understandable, and it has to be robust. It can be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents, including assistive technologies. And I don't know if anybody out there had experience previously with assistive technologies, things like screen readers or braille printers or any of that sort of technology. No? Okay. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about any of those things that will help somebody who is differently able to navigate and use digital content. So for information to be perceivable, it's got to be presented to users in ways they can perceive, obviously. And these are just some quick tips. I'm not going to go through these extensively. I don't want to spend a lot of time just reading from slides. This is posted on the web course for this particular session, this PowerPoint. All these links are live links, so if you want to pursue this, please open up the PowerPoint, click through the live links, and it will give you a lot more information to help you understand the principles underlying these. Operable, again, a bunch of resources there. Give users enough time. Don't use content that causes seizures. Understandable. Understandable is a really fascinating one we could talk about at some point. So I see Rachel was a speech therapist and assistive technology provider. Excellent, Rachel. You should really join our group. And robust. And maximize compatibility with current and future user tools. So a lot of these things we talk about when we talk about creating accessible digital content really are just talking about creating usable digital content and looking at how we can get the most use out of the content that we're providing. So designing and developing or using interfaces that allow access across the board. If any of these four principles are not true, users with disabilities will not be able to use the web. And when we talk about the principles and implementation of using the web and measuring success, WCAG has 3 levels of compliance. Level A is the easiest, and it's minimally compliant, but it is compliant. AA is our target, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And AAA is like a gold standard of accessibility, but it, depending on who you read or talk to about this, it might be practically unachievable. It has a really high impact on design, and it's impossible for some content to ever meet this standard. So AA is our target, AA is what we're checking for, AA is what we're correcting for. And the layers are inclusive. So A is wrapped up in AA, AA is wrapped up in AAA. So if you're AAA compliant, you've got them all covered. If you're AA, you're AA and A. So we've been talking about accessibility, but I would like to move away from accessibility and talk more about inclusive, because inclusive design, it's a method that lets us look at the development of content and the restructuring of our existing content that takes into account all of human diversity and lets us draw on tools that will create systems that invite everybody in. Many people are unable to participate in aspects of society, both physical and digital. Understanding why and how people are excluded gives us actionable steps to take towards inclusive design. Now, I'm going to control myself here because I don't want to wander off into too many other fields, but at some point, we also have to start thinking about our linguistic barriers. Do we have responsibility to provide access to our content in, let's say, Spanish, or if you move down to New York City, various dialects of Chinese are very well popularly spoken. So that's a future discussion, but it's out there if we're going to really look at being inclusive and reaching all of our stakeholders and fulfilling our mission. And there are levels of inclusion. Universal is everyone has the same means of use. An example of that would be a video player with captions and video description and an accessible video player control system. Equivalent use is similar ways to meet the same goals. It's presented in different ways. So an example of that would be a transcript of an audio file. It's the same information, all the information from the audio file is there, but it's a different user experience. An accommodation is a workaround. It's sort of the separate but not equal. It's a text-only version of content. It just is not sufficient to meet accessibility standards. So what are we doing about implementing accessibility here at CCE? Way back when we first started doing this, we identified some resources from Minnesota IT. They had some excellent quick cards for applications that we asked if we could repurpose, and they said yes. We sent out copies of those, and if you are somebody who is a communications person, you should have a copy of those. Heather, correct me here, who did we target with the full 7 cards? Was it just communications and IT folks?
We actually sent a few, I think it was 2 or 3 to each association, and we recommended that it would be communications, you know, whoever was actually dealing with content.
Great. Now, is anybody in this session a communications or an IT person, and have you laid your hands on these? We'd just like to know if our content is reaching the folks that we're hoping it does. Okay, Kate has the cards, of course. Anybody else get these? Carlos saw them. Jen has them. I requested a set but never got it. Okay. Where did you? So it sounds like some of you have never seen them, and I would like a way to be able to get you copies of those. So for those of you who didn't receive these, if you could send an email to our accessibility email list, we'll make sure that you get a copy because they're fairly handy. It covers Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, Acrobat Pro, so all the basic stuff. So send us an email. It's cce-accessibility@cornell.edu, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the Spiral Bound set. Did everybody see we also sent out 2 cards, Why Accessibility Matters card, and then a keyboard shortcut card. Did anybody get those? We sent those out to everybody in the system in theory. All right, good. Well, it looks like possibly they made it out into the system. So that was our first foray into sort of providing some support, and that happened early on in our process. Since then, well, not in parallel with that, and also as part of the push towards accessibility that is a university-wide effort, there are some assessment and evaluation tools that have been identified. Site Improved is a full-featured web accessibility management service, and the use is restricted to faculty and staff for websites related to official university business or in support of the university mission. And that includes you guys. So you can have access to Site Improve. And in a minute, I'm going to show you what the Site Improve interface looks like, just for kicks. And there are also some browser plugins you can drop into Chrome or Chrome and Firefox that will let you quickly take a look at a page or a piece of digital content and find out what the accessibility stop points are. So now I'm going to flip over to my browser, which hopefully, can you all see my browser now? Cool. So, Site Improve. This is the Site Improve interface, and this is the report for Moodle.cce, our online learning content management system. And it gives you a lot of information, but it also provides a very easy way for you to find out what the potential barriers are and how you can correct those. So if I look at improving my score on quality assurance, it goes in there and it says, fix these issues to improve your score. So pages level 3 and above with broken links, if I click on that, that takes me to a listing of all the pages. I have 302 pages that have issues. Now, fortunately for me, these are not my pages, so I can pass all this work off to other people, but I have to teach people how to do the work. And that's part of our process here as well, is helping people learn how to create accessible content. And then if I click on this one, it will pop open a scaled down copy of the page and also give me highlights of what issues need to be fixed and where they are. Site Improve is a very powerful tool, and it can be a little bit overwhelming the first time you go in and you look at a site report, but it does let you really focus in and correct those errors step by step, and then bring your score up so that eventually you get to that wonderful AA standard that we're looking for. That is the actual full-featured Site Improve. Now, as far as browser plugins, the Wave browser plugin is a free plugin that you can download and drop into Chrome. It only works in Chrome. No, I take it back. It works in Chrome and Firefox. The Site Improve Accessibility Checker plugin only works in Chrome. But Wave is Chrome or Firefox. You can download it for free, install it, and you can run it just by clicking its little icon up in your toolbar, and it will give you a report on the page. Now, we're looking at a web accessibility tutorial page, and that has no errors, but it does have 2 alerts. If you click on the little red flag, that will expand it and tell you where those alerts are. If we go to a page that is, let's see what it looks like on an Audible page. Huh. Of course, the demo doesn't work properly. Oh, there it is. It came up and went away. We'll give it a second to load here. And it doesn't want, there we go. Okay, so the Audible page actually has 18 errors that are impeding its accessibility. And if you look at that, you can click through and see what they are. If you click the little eye icon, it will give you more information, why it matters, and why you should correct them. So Wave is a really cool tool. It doesn't have a lot of overhead. You can just fire it up whenever you're on a page with content that you'd like to know. I just click the icon again to close it and it goes away. Site Improve plugin does the similar thing. And you can see here that it identifies those and again gives you the same information on how to correct it. So these are really 2 very easy and handy tools to use as browser plugins to get a start with identifying the big issues with accessibility for sites and digital content. There are other plugins that you can use that will look at color contrast and things like that, but that's a different webinar that we would talk about those in. So now we're going to go back to the presentation. And when you take all this as one whole package, it looks really daunting. But if you start small and you start now, it's a process that you can engage in and integrate into your workflows, so it won't totally overwhelm your life, hopefully. Accommodation is our first step. And you need to create a process for dealing with user requests to make existing content accessible. You provide a user-friendly way for individuals to request assistance with accessibility issues. Generally, that's text in the footer of a web page. And it says, this is the text that we adopted from Cornell. You'll find it on all of our pages and all of our sites. If you have a disability or are having trouble accessing information on this website or need materials in alternative format, contact webaccessibility@yourassociation.com for assistance. When somebody comes to one of our sites and there's a PDF or a newsletter or a piece of multimedia that they cannot access, they need a way to be able to contact you to say, I would like to request access to this. It needs to be accessible to a screen reader, or it needs to be accessible to a Braille printer, or what have you. So you need to designate somebody in your association who can handle those requests. We've been running it now for 6 months on our sites, and we have yet to receive a request yet. But it is there, and it's something that we need to do because we need to start making it known that we are taking this issue seriously. You also need to have contact info in your social media profiles for accommodation requests. So if somebody is going to one of your Instagram posts and you've got an image they can't understand or comprehend, they need to be able to ask you to make that accessible. Once you receive the request, there is a process behind that that means you have to grab that content and make it accessible. So you can't ignore the requests, but it is a first step, and it means you don't have to go through all your existing content right now and make it accessible. You just need to have a process in place in your association, in your office, that will allow you to handle accessibility requests. Also, as part of step 1, any new content you're developing should be developed with accessibility in mind. And you can start by learning and using the 6 core skills that have been identified for creating accessible web content: headings and document structure, hyperlinks, video captions, bullets and numbered list, color and contrast, and image alt text. Fortunately, we have a webinar coming up at 11 o'clock that's going to talk about image alt texts, part of our accessibility series, and the system conference. But if you open up this PowerPoint from the webinar site that you visited this morning, you can click through these links and really get a more clear idea of what it means when you talk about your headings and your document structure. How do you create an accessible web page? What are the heading structures that you need? How do you do decent hyperlinks, video captioning, things like that? So this PowerPoint should be a resource. You can start now with any new documents being created. We do have an accessible CCE branded Word template that's available. Thank you, Katie. The link to that is, again, in this PowerPoint, but it's also on the accessibility.cce.cornell.edu website. Images have to have alt tags, so come to our system conference session. If you haven't signed up, you can still drop in and learn about alt tags. And videos. You can use YouTube closed captioning. So if you're posting videos that are targeted towards anyone at this point, you can have YouTube automatically close caption it. However, you do have to manually correct the closed caption. Depending on the type of video it is, the clarity of the voices, if you have multiple speakers, there are a number of different factors that can get in the way of a very accurate machine transcription. So you need to go back in and correct those. And any automated transcription process, whether it's for videos or audio, anything that's done by a machine needs to have human intervention to correct. So there's some time investment involved in that, but it's generally not bad. I've tested out the Cornell Video on Demand service with their transcription automatic. They have an automatic closed captioning service as well. In my experience, and again, your mileage could vary on this, but in my experience, YouTube closed captioning is more accurate by about 10 or 12%, more or less. So you're going to save some time if you use YouTube closed captioning, in my opinion. There are other services you can hire out that will do closed captioning, but YouTube is free, and then you just need to invest a little time afterwards. So first steps for web accessibility, you can start using headings correctly to organize the structure of your site. Screen readers can use heading structure to navigate content. So you need to use your headings in H1, H2, so on and so forth. Use them correctly and strategically. The content of the website is well organized and can be easily interpreted by screen readers. As anyone other than, I'm trying to remember who was our accessibility assistive tech, Rachel. Has anybody other than Rachel had experience with a screen reader? I'm just curious. Anyone out there fired one up and just sort of tried to use one? All right, Aaron. And okay, Aaron and Brianna. How have you? What did you find the experience to be like? Was it a useful experience for you? All right. I would. It's a bit overwhelming first turning it on, Aaron. Yes, indeed. And I would strongly recommend that anybody who is interested in really taking accessibility seriously, download a free screen reader and fire it up and let it try to go through a site that you want to get information from. It's a very eye-opening experience, and in many ways, it made me more clearly understand what the issues are. There is a free screen reader called NVDIA, and we link to that from our accessibility site, so you can download it for free, install it. You're going to want to run it once, and it's going to want to run every time from then on. You need to turn it off because it's going to drive you absolutely batty if you leave it on. Because the experience of having something read to you by a screen reader is radically different than our common experience as fully able folks. So it's a really good educational practice. I would strongly encourage everybody to try a screen reader just for the experience. And yep, oh, Heather dropped in the link. Thank you, Heather. Second steps for web accessibility, give your links unique and descriptive names. So often when we do hyperlinks, we'll copy a web page link and drop it into a page and not give it any other thought. But when you include links in your content, use text that properly describes where the link will go. Click here is not considered descriptive and is ineffective for a screen reader user. So if I'm linking to the CCE homepage, instead of having the link description be www.cce.cornell.edu, I would make that CCE homepage and have that be the active link. Also use color with care. Most common color deficiency, or red-green color deficiency, affects approximately 8% of the population. So there are some color contrast checkers that you can find as plugins, and they will help you to identify color combinations that are accessible. So using color with care is a good thing to be aware of as well. When we talk about document accessibility, use the accessible Word template. It includes the correct structural markup and style elements. Add title, subject, keywords, author, and language. They're important in any document. They're used by screen readers to find and identify the content in the document. And add alt text to images. Now, if you're creating a document and you're using Word, there is a built-in page not found. We'll look at that, Jen. It should be found. If you use Word or PowerPoint or any other Microsoft product, there's a built-in accessibility checker. You generally have to find that by going up to the help, what can I help you with search box, type in accessibility, and it will pull up the accessibility checker for that document. And it goes through and identifies all the elements that are making it non-accessible, and you can also correct them through that interface. It's really a good practice to get into just by default, and it's really easy to rectify most of the issues that you have before you post it online or before you take that Word document and turn it into a PDF. Accessibility for PDF is going to be talked about extensively in an upcoming webinar. It's kind of gnarly. It's not the most straightforward thing to do. So it's always better to work from a Word document, make sure that's as accessible as possible, and then deal with the one or two things you have to in Acrobat to make sure that it is fully accessible. As far as social media accessibility first steps, surprise, no surprise, it's alt text. Depending on the tool, the ability to add alt text may or may not exist. What about publisher? The Accessibility checkers should be built into Publisher, but I honestly have not tested that. Has anyone out there in the world tested that? And if not, we'll make sure that we do and let you all know what the results are. It's not. Oh, Katie says it's not built into Publisher. Well, that's rather annoying. Wow. Katie, you did the newsletter one. Is the newsletter, accessible newsletter, coming up? Or did that? Yes. Okay. So in April, in a week or so, Katie is going to be doing an accessible newsletter webinar. So that's where you could get more information on Publisher and InDesign and those sorts of things. So I would recommend attending that one. Newsletters and Outlook we're going to be covering. Check out the Accessible social media page from Accessible U for more tool-based specifics. Accessible U is this great resource from Minnesota, and we pulled a lot of initial content from there, and it really helped us focus and get started on our journey to accessibility. So that's also linked in the accessibility.cce site, so I would recommend that as a resource as well. First steps for accessible video, transcription and closed captioning. It needs to be closed captioned. You could theoretically manually close caption your videos, but that's going to take a lot of time. So if you have a lot of free time on your hand, you can sit there and you can open up the video in YouTube and it will let you caption it as you go. I don't recommend that unless you have nothing else to do in your life. YouTube subtitles and closed captions we mentioned, you need to have some manual correction. There are for-fee services. They provide highly accurate transcriptions that need minimal corrections, but it does cost money and budgeting may be a challenge. If you don't have a deep budget, it's going to be next to impossible. So YouTube really seems to be the path of least resistance for providing accessible video captioning. As far as accessible presentations, we are currently testing the Microsoft Presentation Translator for PowerPoint. It transcribes presentations in real time. It's free, and our preliminary testing with it is very positive. It is surprisingly accurate in providing real-time transcriptions. So if you're presenting a public workshop with a slide deck, you can fire up the presentation translator and it will, on screen, transcribe as you talk. It's very, very cool, and I think it's got a lot of potential. We'll probably have a webinar about that sometime towards the end of summer. Also, just to remind you, there is the accessibility checker in PowerPoint before you present your presentations. You can run that, and that will let you know where you have issues, duplicate headings, or unidentified images that need alt text, things like that. This slide set has resources and links. They are live links, so if you open it up from the site you went to find the webinar link, you'll be able to look at our accessibility site, the Site Improve. There's a web link there, the plugin for browsers, you can get to those. All the first steps documents are available as well. This is part of our webinar series, and we've done a bunch before. Well, we've done 4 before, including this one. Accessible images coming up in just about 20 minutes. Newsletters is April 24th, and PDFs is May 22nd. And again, we'll be scheduling more of those as we head on into the summer, and look forward to information about those. And if you want to contact us, and the general info is accessibility.cce.cornell.edu. The quick cards are all there as downloadable PDFs. The Word template is linked. Webinar recordings, lynda.com tutorials. Cornell resources are available at accessibility.cornell.edu, in particular the web accessibility section. And then again, to reach us, it's cce-accessibility@cornell.edu. So with that, my slideshow is done. And I would like to take any questions or comments or things like that, if you all have any.
Paul, I have one that has come in remotely. A lot of the CCE associations use a standardized web service, web that's through Tompkins County, the Think Topography thing.
Uh-huh.
What's the accessibility on that? Is that being taken care of by them? Do we need to each take, I mean, can you speak to the accessibility of those websites?
I can boot that over to Heather or Katie to speak to that. Heather?
There we go. Katie, if you want to talk, I can give you sound here.
That's Heather. I can talk a little bit. So we don't run the Think Topography sites, but we have met with Sandy Rep and Greg Cops, who run those sites, and so they're working on the tech end of it. And in fact, the other day I saw that they provided information about tagging images within the site, adding alt text to images on the site. So please follow up with them if you have any questions. But of course, like Paul said, it's not just done on the tech end. You know, there's only so much you can do on the tech end. There is a lot of responsibility on the content providers as well. So I'd recommend following up with Sandy Rep if you have any questions about that.
And I'm also seeing that Sandy set up Site Improve accounts for staff. So everybody, whoever your main web person is in your county, should have a Site Improve account.
Cool. And Karen was asking, I assume the presentation is on the CCE accessibility site, right? It will be. All the sessions from the conference are going to be captioned. So that process is going to take 2 or 3 weeks. So this will be up on the accessibility site as soon as it's captioned and accessible. So I'd look for it in 2 or 3 weeks. The PowerPoint for this session is available right now, and it is fully accessible. But I will be sure to post that as well on the accessibility site so that everybody can have access to it. So we're running out of time here. Are there any other final questions? And if you do think of questions after we close this session, you know how to get a hold of us. CCE. Okay, Katie just gave you a link to the slides. Very cool. CCE-accessibility@cornell.edu is our address. I want to thank you all for taking your time and your interest in this topic. It's tremendously important, and we'll have a lot more webinars, a lot more opportunities coming forward. But please feel free to contact us. Feel free to volunteer to join in the process if you'd like and you have the time. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference. It was really great having you all here, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure. Take care, everyone.